Today we were going to have a group of three joining me to recap the season, much to the way that we previewed the season. But as usual, only one of them comes through with what he says he's going to do. And I know I'm throwing a little bit of shade at Chauncey Jones, the great producer, as well as play-by-play extraordinaire Greg Heister, the only one to follow up on his word and join today on this recording, none other than my fellow analyst for the Gonzaga regional games and Richard Fox. Richard, I appreciate you keeping your word. How goes life?
I got your back, buddy. I got your back. No, it's good, man. But best time of year. I'm anxious for Friday, but definitely Saturday to come along and let's see how the boys do.
It's always the best time of year for me, that conference week, because the WCC plays early. Gonzaga's been in that title game like 24 straight years, so you know you're going to be in that title game. If you win it or if you've had a great year, you can just relax and watch games the rest of the week. What does your conference week and first week of the NCAA tournament look like for you? Do you take a week off of work? Do you kind of hide out in your office? How does it work?
Well, the conference week, I probably watch the most basketball, that week that you're referencing. I mean, I don't know. This year's kind of funny. I mean, with it starting on a Friday, most years I would probably check out Thursday afternoon and be pretty hard to get on a Friday, the first weekend. But this year it's a little odd with games, the second round being on Monday. That may be hard to get away as much as I'd like. But if GU's playing, I'm going to check out and watch that. And I may or may not have this live stream going on my computer. So, yeah, it'll be fun.
Well, you and I have called games together, I believe, for 8 years now alongside Greg.
A long time.
And we've seen a lot of good teams in that stretch. We saw a team that broke through and had that first national #1 ranking. We saw a team and called games for a team that made their first Final Four. And then this team sets the precedent of being one of very few to go undefeated, regular season and conference tournament. How does this team separate themselves in your mind from maybe, say, that 2017 team that was very good that lost in the title game to Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say this is probably Mark's best offensive team. They've got a guy in Timmy who's, pretty special. In any era, but I think particularly now with the game, where the game is gone, you just don't see a lot of guys on the low block that can do what he does. He can score, over either shoulder. He's got a face-up game, and this year we've seen him be able to shoot that 15, 16-foot jump shot. And nobody's really had an answer for him. And as the year's gone on, I think he's gotten better at handling the double team and kicking it out to guys. And then on the perimeter, they have so many guys who can hurt you either on the bounce or shooting the ball. And I think what really separates them from everybody in the country this year, but I think for GU's history, is the ball it rarely sticks. It's so hard to guard them because the ball's always moving, and it's just a really unselfish group. So I think offensively, they're in a class of their own when it comes to the history of this program. Every team's got something they probably worry about at night. And I think for this group, it's just they're not very big up front. If you compare them to that team with Karnowski and Collins and Williams, and you go back even a little bit further when they lost to Duke in the Elite Eight, when they had Sabonis, Wiltshire, Karnowski, those are big teams that could really protect the rim. And it's a different way of playing defensively, but with the guard play that you're going to see in the tournament, particularly as you move further into the deal. I think I worry a little bit that could become more of an issue as teams can break you down with more success. But they've gotten better throughout the year defensively. I don't think they were very good on that end, or in comparison to where they are now to start things off. But they've certainly tightened it up defensively, and then. Again, without the size up front, they're not maybe an elite rebounding team in a typical mold, but their guards are so good at crashing the glass, but on both ends, but particularly defensively. Yayi, Suggs, and Nemhard will even get in there and get some rebounds that I think collectively they can compete on the glass. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've got a soft spot for that 2017 team, not just because they made it as far as they did, but I really like the construct of that team with Nigel Williams-Goss at the point. And, no one talks about that Elite Eight team, but that team was awfully good and had Duke on the ropes, and Duke ended up winning it that year. But certainly, this is one of the best teams, and they may prove to be the one that gets through and wins it all.
Yeah, you've got some great observations there with those other teams, and the leadership of Nigel was fantastic. And I do agree with you that team that lost to Duke was tremendous. They just kind of hit a cold stretch, and they ran into a great Duke team at the wrong time. Every player, at least from my viewpoint, always looks at theirs as maybe being a little bit better than they truly were. I know my 0-2 team, we lost in the first round, but I want to think that we could have competed.
Right.
Now, in all honesty, I know we didn't have the depth and the talent from top to bottom to match up with this current team, even though my pride tells me I want to say that.
Right.
If you look at your team, the 2 years that you played at GU after transferring from Colorado, you had some really good players. You had Blake Stepp, Ronny Turioff, Corey Violet, a number of other guys. Is there one guy on this year's current team that you would take, put it on that team, and think that, hey, you know what? Boom, he's the difference maker. We would be at that same level.
Oh, I think Suggs. As good as Blake was, I just think having, when you were there with Blake, we had GU had that 2-point guard kind of lineup, and as good as guys like Skinner and Knight were, and Kyle Bankhead, really did a nice job in his role. At least in my mind, we didn't really have that secondary playmaker, and that team was really good. I don't know if the program was ready yet for that kind of attention and those expectations, and we certainly didn't live up to it that year when we lost to Nevada. But yeah, I think it's a pretty, our front line was awfully good. As talented as Timmy is, I don't know if we needed a whole lot more there. And we had a lot of length with Skinner and Knight. But just that Suggs is special, that second ball handler, a guy who can create his own offense. It would have given a guy like Blake a lot more leeway if he's having a bad night, not to have to force the shot in the way he did for us. That group, we were very dependent on Blake scoring the ball. If you put Suggs on that team, he doesn't have to do quite as much of that.
I agree with you. I think you put another ball handler with Blake on those teams you're referencing would have given him even more freedom to play free, because he had so much responsibility on his shoulders. Initiate offense, play make, score, and then defend. And if you were to take a little bit off of his shoulders, he would have been able to pick and choose or play a little bit more free at times, where he wouldn't have to worry so much about having things covered.
Yeah. Well, I think for this group, that's what makes them really unique, is if the ball swings, it's swinging to another playmaker. Mm-hmm. And I think in our era, back when we played, as good as those teams were and competitive, if the ball swung, often the ball stopped, and it was, let's get it back to, at least for us, let's find Blake and figure out, in a clock situation. This group doesn't have that problem. If Suggs does get shut down with a double or whatever the case might be, once the ball gets to the other side, it's Nemhard, Kispert, Ayayi, guys who know what they're doing and can either shoot it, drive it, or play in the pick and roll. It's pretty unique what they have going.
Yeah, I'm going to reference one guy that if the ball got thrown to the opposite side of the floor, he was either going to shoot it or the ball was going to stop. And that's our former roommate living in what was it, 222 Corkery Apartments, or one of those. My senior year was Kyle Bankhead. He is now an assistant coach. He's an assistant coach with UNC Greensboro. Do you stay in touch with Kyle throughout the season? Do you follow his team? And if you've talked with him, has he shared anything about what he sees with this Gonzaga team?
I do stay in touch with Kyle pretty frequently. I don't actually track how Greensboro is doing as regularly as I say GU, but once a month or so. Kyle's doing really well. All I know is I think after last year, the previous year, when they kind of had a bid stolen from them, I know they're real excited to get back. I think they're playing Florida State. Yeah. That's certainly going to be a tall task, but I'll tell you what, Kyle, Wes Miller, they're going to have a good game plan going into that. I put money down that's going to be a good game.
I would agree with that. And yes, UNC Greensboro, nice to see them back in the tournament. If you get a chance, you'll probably watch that game, and
Oh yeah.
I can only imagine how much airtime Kyle's going to have scowling on the bench because a guy missed a defensive rotation.
No, I've seen Kyle happy. If anybody's watching this, Kyle does break a smile out. So, but when it comes to the actual games, he's pretty stoic. Yeah.
I love it. I love the fact that we've got teammates and friends that are involved with March Madness in different capacities. Now, you've done the broadcasting thing on the radio side. You've done the broadcasting on the TV side, where we've worked together for a number of years. What's it been like to see the transformation of Gonzaga, kind of being on that fringe if they lose the title game in the WCC versus now being the number one overall seed? What does that make you think of?
Oh man, they're just at a different level. I remember my junior year, we lost to San Diego in the WCC tournament and championship game, and we were an at-large, and the last four to be called included us. So I remember just sitting in Billy Greer's basement, the whole team, and the cheer we let out was, I'll never forget it, because it was more relief, because at that point there was a lot of pressure to keep the run going, because you knew the longer the run went, the easier it was. I think, at least my mind was, the longer this run goes, at some point it's no longer going to be a run, and it's just going to be the status quo. And they've gotten there now where, for better or worse, the expectation is GU is going to be in this position or a similar position for the foreseeable future. So I don't know if I can relate to that. I mean, we certainly felt the pressure, at least my junior year, that we had to win that tournament. We got lucky. My senior year, I think we ended up third in the country before the tournament. We knew we were in. But the question was always, what seed were you going to be? I know that you guys faced that your senior year, had a great year, high ranking, and all of a sudden, but what, a 6 seed? Mm-hmm. And I think that's also the difference now versus then. There's an understanding and a respect for how good the program is, even if the league is not at the level of some of these Big Six conferences. I don't think that's held against the program in the same way that it was in our era.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not held against them the way it was years ago, but it took a long time to get over that hurdle. Yeah. The amount of media attention that is brought on the program continues to build and continues to grow. There was a Sports Illustrated article that was a front page cover story a few weeks back. You've got literally New York Post, Washington Post, New York Times, every publication you could think of is writing stories on Gonzaga and how it became what it has become. How many of those articles do you read? Because I know as a former player myself, I like reading them because it's fun, but it also kind of shows you a little bit of the history that both of us and other guys were a part of. How much do you read and follow those?
I mean, I certainly read some of them. I don't. I think the difference here is you've got a much larger family than I do, but you're doing this as part of your profession, right? I mean, for me, the TV stuff that we do is a blast, and I love. It's the level I want to be. So when we're done with our season, I'm kind of like focusing on family and my real job. But yeah, I'm certainly going to read those major articles. I think everybody that played through that program has a real sense of pride, and I credit Mark and the athletic department for doing this. They've, I think, more often than not, gone out of the way to let the old guys feel like they've got some ownership, that they were a part of this journey. It doesn't feel like we're no longer part of it. So because there's still that connection, I think it's easy to get excited and easy to feel a lot of pride when you read those articles. And I certainly feel that when I do.
All right, Foxy, last question before I let you go. And I'm actually glad that Chauncey and Greg didn't join. One, because Greg would hog all the answers, and two, because Chauncey, he would have some random comment that we would all be shaking our heads about.
We'd be talking about the Lakers somehow.
Yeah, he'd bring up Kobe and the Lakers,
Yeah.
and we'd go off on a different tangent for sure. But I have to ask this. Give me your
Fire away.
Final Four, and then give me how this season ends at the Final Four, and does it end with Gonzaga cutting down the nets with an undefeated season?
Yeah, it's tough. Only because I think you know this about me. During the season, I'm pretty objective and arm's length about it. But once the tournament hits, I kind of become a fanboy all of a sudden. I get really nervous, and I think Gonzaga is going to be there in the Final Four. I like their region. Nobody in the region really scares me. It's not really. I don't see a bad matchup per se. Great teams and a lot of tough games, but I'm certainly going to put them in as a champion. I really like Michigan. And that may be part because I've actually seen them play 3 or 4 times, but I like their size. I know I can't remember the kid's name, hurt himself.
Rivers, yeah, he's a good guard, good wing.
Yeah, and good size. That hurts him quite a bit. So if last thing I read was there's a chance he might be able to play later in the tournament, but I certainly like them. Baylor, they just haven't been the same since they got hit by COVID. I mean, they've dropped a couple in the last 3 weeks, I want to say. I'm looking at the bracket right now. I don't know why, but I feel like Ohio State, given how well they played down the stretch. The Big Ten's so good, Dan. You know this.
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to be shocked if there's 2, maybe 3 big? They've done it before. And then Illinois is tough. Yeah, man. I'm Houston. I've seen them play a couple of times. Boy, they like to get up and down. This feels like about as wide open a tournament as I've ever seen. And I do think there's a pretty big gulf between GU and let's give Baylor the benefit of the doubt before they kind of stumble down the stretch. I think there's a gulf between those 2 and everybody else. And because of that, people used to talk about parity a lot more than they do now. But I'm certainly not going to be surprised to see a Greensboro beat Florida State or Ohio win their game, that kind of thing. It's going to be pretty wide open this year. Who do you have in the Final Four?
Well, I'm pulling for UNC Greensboro.
Your opinion matters way more than mine. So
well, I'll give you my 4. I'll give you my 4. I've got Gonzaga. I've got Alabama. I really like how Nate Oates gets those guys playing up and down. He gets them playing hard. I like Baylor. I know they've struggled more so on the defensive end than on the offensive end when they've come back. But I love that Gonzaga connection with John Jacobs and Rem Bakamus on that coaching staff. And then I got Illinois. Their point guard, Ayo Dosunmu, and the big fella in the middle, Kofi Cockburn. Oh, my gosh. That's a guy who I do think could give Gonzaga some problems. And then they got some nice guards, Curbelo and Frazier, that come in and just – it's like – hey, let's see if I'm hot tonight. And they just start jacking threes and playing aggressive. If they're hot, they're tough out. And they got another GU connection as well. Stephen Gentry, who we all know as Shaggy in Spokane, is an assistant coach on that bench. So that's my Final Four. But I guess I'm going to end this with you. Does Gonzaga cut down the nets with history as an undefeated team?
Yes.
Awesome. Love it. I'm right there with you. I think they're going to get it done. So I know you're proud to be a fellow Gonzaga Bulldog, as am I. Yeah. Great to have you join. And looking forward to the text message threads during the course of the NCAA tournament with yourself and a number of the other former Zags. So thanks for joining, Richard.
Anytime, buddy. Thanks.